This Kyle Tucker situation is driving me crazy, but we're finally getting some clarity on what's actually happening. The Blue Jays want him bad, and they're apparently willing to go places other teams won't. But there's one team ramping up their efforts, and we need to talk about what that means for Toronto's chances. A report dropped a couple days ago that's pretty significant. It says the Blue Jays are expected to offer Kyle Tucker a longer contract than the Mets and Dodgers. Right now, those are effectively the three teams in this race: Mets, Dodgers, Blue Jays, the usual suspects. But here's what's different this time compared to Ohtani or Soto. Toronto is apparently willing to go further and do more than New York and LA are. That's a massive shift. The Athletic's Will Salmon reports that, while all three teams are in Tucker's options, New York's preference is to offer a shorter contract. Salmon speculates the Mets would like something less than 4 years. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays are expected to offer a longer deal. He also mentions the Dodgers can't be ignored because they have a history of swooping in at the last second and making deals happen. I can definitely agree with that. We've seen the rug pulled out from under us by both LA and New York before. But if we take this at face value, that the Jays are willing to go longer than the Mets and Dodgers, that's theoretically a really good thing for Toronto. I tweeted about this the other day. If the Jays are actually the only team willing to go long-term with Tucker, the math kind of speaks for itself. Short-term high average annual value with risk after, or a decade plus of guaranteed generational wealth. Let me know in the comments what you take, but I'm going decade plus every single time. Tucker could definitely get $40 million a year from New York. Maybe it's a 3-year deal for $120 million. Ridiculous money for only 3 seasons. But after that, he's hitting free agency at 31, turning 32. What if he hasn't been playing well? There's legitimate risk in that approach, even if you're getting $40 million annually. For me, I'd take a little less per year, maybe $35 million, but have it guaranteed for 10 or 11 or 12 years, which is reportedly what Toronto is willing to do, that nobody else will match. This makes so much sense for Toronto when you look at the contracts coming off their books. Think about this as the George Springer replacement. Springer's here for this season, and hopefully he follows up his incredible year. But after that, he hits free agency, along with Kevin Gausman and Dalton Varsho. That's a lot of money coming off the books, and a lot of talent, especially in the outfield. Tucker becomes your Springer replacement. Him and Vlad do this thing together. You have him for a decade, and that's your World Series window right there. Compare that to the Mets. Look at their contracts coming off in 2027. Luis Torrens, David Peterson, nobody in the same tier as Springer or Gausman or Varsho. Not that level of money leaving the books. I understand why they want a shorter-term deal, but that's not stopping them from getting opportunistic, as John Heyman put it. They're watching how this market develops. Let's call it what it is. Steve Cohen has an ego. He loves making big free agent splashes. Even though they didn't want to spend like they did on Soto in previous years, he sees an opportunity here. He's a savvy, smart businessman. If Kyle Tucker is still on the market in mid-January because Toronto hasn't given him that lucrative long-term deal yet, Cohen is going to go all in. He can't help himself. So if you're Toronto, yes, you have leverage being the only team willing to give long-term money. But you have to play your cards intelligently. Tucker is a phenomenal player, 5-tool guy, tier 1 talent. Toronto knows they're the only team offering long-term, and because they know that, I don't think they're giving him the best value right now. Why would you? Why give him $400 million if nobody's even offering $350? It doesn't make sense from a negotiation standpoint. Toronto knows they're in a good spot, and because of that, they're probably lowballing him on either the AAV or the overall term. That's me speculating, but it makes logical sense. Here's the problem, though. They have to be careful. Steve Cohen and the Dodgers are going to see that Toronto's trying to save a buck. They're going to come in and say, we'll give you a ton of money for a short period and give Tucker a strong alternative. That's what I think is happening right now. That's why the Mets are going to get more aggressive. Because if Toronto is the only team willing to give long-term money, why hasn't a deal happened yet? I don't think Toronto's at the point of giving him fair value or what he's asking because there isn't competition. But if the Mets and Dodgers start engaging more on a short-term deal, that alone should incentivize Toronto to up their offer, even though the Mets aren't offering the same contract length. There might actually be a leverage play happening here, but in reverse. Maybe the Mets are being used as leverage to get Toronto to offer more money. We're always the ones being used as leverage. But this time it might actually be flipped. Either way, The update is that Toronto is still in the best spot as the only team willing to go long-term. But they have to play this intelligently. They cannot lowball him forever. Eventually, they need to give him the big pay.